that idea that a white knight is going to come in and save your financial hide is a big mistake.
Well, not only the notion of it, but the belief system that you can find that person on your own. Like, good luck.
Mm-hmm. We are here with another lean and mean episode of the Cold Star Project, the podcast about the unexpected challenges of scaling for tech and manufacturing founders who started a business, got selling, and then realized, whoa, I'm going to have to do things differently to get from here to here on the revenue plateaus. Otherwise, I'm not going to make it. So I'm here with Jon Paramore, who is an awesome guy about bringing on sales teams and sales team members so that you can scale them. Jon, thanks for being here.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
And I like the setup. That's awesome. Very, very professional looking.
Yeah,
so,
good time.
Let's assume that our viewers don't know anything about you and what you do. Let's begin with the story that I often see you talking about in your marketing about creating a business that you ultimately didn't like. What happened?
Yeah, it wasn't. So for the last 17 years, actually, before we started the stuff we do now, I was in the world of contracting and built a business over 17 years that did in excess of $80 million in revenue, had as many employees as 125 at any given time. And we, I had several instances and situations where we grew it to a very high level and then would like tear it all down and start over, mostly out of boredom. But what I found later in my life was it was lack of fulfillment. So I was focusing on an industry that I really loved deep down inside, but I just really couldn't serve the type of people that I really wanted to serve. And because I got into it at such a young age, I felt trapped and imprisoned by it. And ultimately, in 2009, ended up driving it into the ground and then successfully rebuilding it a couple of years later to turn around and sell it and ultimately end up where we are today. So a lot of fun stories, man. Like the stories that I could tell you about growing a business from when I was 23 years old to when I sold it when I was 37. I mean, it was the most incredible experience ever, but also the largest lessons of my life came from doing some really crazy and dumb nonsense with it. So it's been amazing. So
all right. You have a new branding, I guess, over the last year with a rhinoceros in it. Tell us about that.
It's actually, when we started our brands, our companies, we wanted something really powerful, but everybody uses a lion. Everybody's like, oh, you got to be strong like a lion. And so I didn't want to brand it anywhere near that. I actually wanted to make it more where there's like a calm subtlety with the rhino, but there's also like this, if you mess with it, it's going to mess you up kind of thing. So that's why we really like it. Like it's almost like, it's not and that's a lot how we operate and why we identified so well with it. It's not one of those creatures that like just goes around all day long and tries to kill things. It's more of like the subtle beast that's like in its own right, by looking at it, it's very powerful. But if it wants to create, some level of disturbance, it can do that as well. So that's the reason why we chose that. But it goes well with our company names Smash, Lift, and Move. They all kind of intertwine one another and are branded by the rhino.
Right. So, right on. Love that.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So let's dig into scaling sales teams. Why is it that I see this all the time? The advice out there of just hire a commission-based salesperson, put an ad up and get a commission-based salesperson. Why is that good, bad, ugly? What happens when you do that?
Well, so the phrase itself is not the destructive part. The just hire a commission-only sales rep. The what tends to be more destructive is the fact that most people believe that they can train or mold anyone into becoming a sales rep. That people by nature, because they see the opportunity and the possibility to make a lot of money, just accept the fact that they'll do it by commission only. And one thing that we find is there are definitely people that are DNA geared or DNA built to do that. But those people are like the less than 0.5%, right? Like and they've got to be drawn to a particular product. They've got to have a belief in the core of what that product does or what that company does. There's just like some intangibles that need to go in it. But it's, if for somebody who's listening to this, who might say, man, I'd love to find a commission only sales rep. If you don't have like some level of opportunity, if there's not some level of training, if there's not some level of lead, like if there's not some guts to that, and the sole purpose that you're trying to do that is to save money or to prevent from having to pay a salary, that's just like a giant recipe for disaster. Like we see that happen all the time.
Love it. Yeah. And that idea that a white knight is going to come in and save your financial hide is a big mistake.
Well, not only the notion of it, but the belief system that you can find that person on your own. Like, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Like
and
those guys
want to work for you, right?
Exactly. Those guys that are that way are already working for one of your competitors. They're not living on job boards and things like that. So,
right. So yeah, let's get into a bit of that then. Okay.
Yeah.
What should people be filtering for? Obviously, they should come talk to you because you can help source them. But what should they be looking for if they do decide to go out on their own and try and get a good salesperson?
So just like I actually spoke at a conference not that long ago where we were talking about salespeople, and the main question I asked people was, how many people in this room, by a show of hands, can throw a baseball 100 miles an hour? And not a single person raised their hand. And I was like, okay, cool. So by a show of hands, how many people feel like they could throw a football the length of a football field? And nobody raised their hands. And I'm like, okay, so again, by a show of hands, how many people in this room feel like that they are accountants? Maybe 5, 6, 7 people raised their hand. And I'm like, okay, so how many people in this room, if you were going to hire a sales rep, believe that they have the capacity to hire a sales rep right out of the gate, first try? And like a lot of people in the room could raise their hand. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So the salespeople by nature have a certain set of DNA. Like just like the guy that can throw a baseball 100 miles an hour, just like the guy that can throw a football down a football field, there is a clinical, like these people are born with this specific type of like mentality. It is not a taught mentality. It is not a learned behavior. It's who they are at their core. And so when a default mechanism inside of an organization is, well, anybody can be taught how to sell, that's actually not accurate. The accurate statement is someone who possesses the intangibles can be molded into a very high performing and producing salesperson. That's the reality. It's just like if you were to take me, who is sales minded by DNA, and you were to ask me to become a bookkeeper, and you put me in an environment where I got to become a bookkeeper, like people are going to die. Like that's not who I am at the core. So finding these people is a process. It is done by having an opportunity that they will thrive in. And we might talk about this a little bit further down the line, but it's not so much like I see a lot of sales ads on Indeed and Monster and ZipRecruiter and all those places. And they try to make them very benefit and incentive laden. Like, oh, hey, we pay more money in sales than XYZ, or come here where the opportunity is make 100K first year. The best of the best sales reps already know in their mind, they can pretty much go wherever they want and write their own check. Like they have that certainty in their mind. Like you've heard the old phrase of I could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in a white dress. Like that's how they really think. Like they have the capacity to do that. They're not super interested in the money that you're offering. What they're more interested in is, what does the opportunity look like?
Right. Can I plug in here? Can I get to work quickly? Are people actually buying this thing already?
Exactly. Is it an easy, is the path of resistance simple, or is it incredibly complicated? You know, like that's the kind of stuff that they want to know. And honestly, like there are some things out there that are complicated to sell. Like there are big ticket items, like selling a package of F-18s to a foreign country is not an easy sale, right? Like that's a complicated sale. It takes a specific individual to be able to handle something like that. But there's also a big payoff for somebody like that in the end when that thing goes down. So,
right. So first bit of advice from Jon there after don't look for the white knight is write your ad about the opportunity, not about the performance
That's it.
benefits of
That's it.
the opportunity. When it comes to reward structures or performance plans, what do you see that has gone horribly wrong?
um, Overpaying on the front side. I would say any sales rep that comes into your organization that asks for a nominal salary, or I'm sorry, nominal is the opposite, for a large salary, is likely not a fit. Most sales guys that come into an organization, if you paid them some level of a base, something small, or you gave them some level of a draw, something small, and the incentive program is in their favor, and it essentially is a culture of constant winning. Those are the things that work really well. The things that don't work really well are the big-sided salaries, the very difficult process to getting to a sale, things of that nature. Like, those are deterrents for the high-level salespeople. They don't want to mess with that stuff. So the easier you make the process of prospecting or landing a sale, and combined with a very lucrative reward when it happens, that's the best environment for most sales reps to go into. Like, that's what they're looking for. Like, what's the path to get me there? And when I'm there and I create a sale that you're looking for, what's the incentive look like?
Okay.
Or the
And
compensation?
Jon, I want you to dig into those stories from your past personally, or clients that you've experienced. You don't have to name names. And if you want to
Yeah.
share them, just start talking, okay? Because
Yeah.
that people really want to hear that.
Yeah.
So
So we can definitely go into that stuff. You tell me when.
go.
Okay. Yeah.
Anytime.
So so I've walked into, for instance, we do a lot of consulting work with a lot of different companies. I've walked into some companies before where they just couldn't figure out why the sales team wasn't producing sales on a consistent basis. And the number one thing that in this particular instance that I found was that, number one, there was an alignment issue. They had people that told them in an interview process that they could sell, and then once they got them behind a desk and got them on a phone, the guy couldn't close anybody in. Like, the framing language was off. The conversations they were having were off. They weren't fact finding. They were product justifying. They were all over the place. And then on top of that, the ads that they were running to find these people talked about the promise of a paycheck. They didn't talk about the incentive of a paycheck. And so the types of candidates that they were, and this is a very powerful word if you guys are looking for sales reps, the kinds of candidates they were attracting were like the polar opposite of what they actually wanted. And so what I said to the people that we were working with was, there's a phrase that goes, you get what you intend. And if you go back to when you wrote the ad, and if you go back to when you hired these people, what you actually ended up with was exactly what you intended. Now, it might not be what you desire, which we can correct, but it's definitely what you intended based on the ads that you wrote. So that's just like one specific example of, like, putting the wrong people on the wrong chairs, not properly outlining the core functions and attributes that you wanted to have these people essentially possess. And then once you got them into that system, not training them well on the language and the framing that they needed to be able to actually get people to buy something.
Right. And I don't know. I've seen that. For those who are not watching the video version of this, I've been nodding the whole way. Jon's been sharing that story. But the best talkers often get the jobs, right? And that is unfortunate that job interviews go that way. And I've also been that guy who's been the best talker and gotten a job that maybe I wasn't the right fit for. But I'm a pretty good sales guy, so I can get the thing. I can make the sale sometimes, even though I shouldn't, right? And I know in my past in employment roles, sometimes I did that. So, and it led to what you talk about, that misaligned thing where you end up looking for a paycheck and steadiness instead of eager to grab hold of that opportunity. So what can a business owner do who wants to hire a salesperson? You start talking about attraction, and not law of attraction, but filtering for the specific things that you want, which is somebody who's kind of hungry for the opportunity, somebody who knows their own value and just wants to kind of get into the steady stream. What about, you talk about, or you see this sometimes, prospectors versus closers. Do you believe in the division of labor in those two things, or can one person do it all?
So we break them down into hunters and trappers, right?
Okay.
Like, so that's the specific language. It's all relative. This, relatively the same. Somebody in our world that we hire that thrives on the hunt, right? Like, and I don't mean to be crass. These terms are a bit crass, but I'm gonna be blunt with you guys and just be honest, right? So they enjoy the thrill of the hunt, meaning they like to connect to people. They like to have conversations with people. They like to find people in social networks. They like to find people out and about that might be a really good fit for the product that they sell. Those people are fantastic at the front side process of the sales process. They enjoy the connection. They enjoy the relationship build part. They actually might be really, really good at the framing of a conversation and getting someone to buy something. Those people are the rarest of the rare breeds when it comes to sales, because those people are willing to go out and do things that most aren't, which means having a very raw conversation from jump. Like, they could walk into a room and control a room because they just have that dynamic personality, and that's what makes them very easy to get along with. They possess this special charisma, things like that. So those people are very, very rare. The second group of people that we typically identify as a trapper would be specifically, so the first group of people, those would be like your door-to-door salespeople. Those would be like your outbound call center people, your telemarketers, things like that. Okay. The second group of people, the trappers, those are more the people that like facilitate a lot of inbound leads. And their responsibility is essentially to walk those people through a specific cadence that gets them to a sale. Those also might be people sitting in a call center. Those might be people at a car dealership. Most of the time, actually, we do a lot of recruiting for car dealers. And one of the things that we find is the mistake they make is they say, when we talk to them, we want somebody that'll go get it, right? Well, that's like the opposite of a car dealership, right? Not many car sales guys that are really, really good, like, walk outside of the box and like start going to like Taco Bell or Walmart or Target or somewhere and start having conversations with people about buying an automobile. Like, that just doesn't happen. They sit inside of a box, which is called a car dealership. They wait for somebody to come in. And then when they come in, they put them through a specific set of cadences, and essentially they sit them down at a desk and they begin the process of negotiation. So that essentially is a trapper. Once the people come to them, it's their responsibility to trap them into a purchase. So that's so back to your original question, can those be the same people? It's very rare. Usually somebody who's really great at prospecting is not a fit for a trapping role. Like, they wouldn't be great at like hard closing somebody on a phone or something of that nature. The opposite is also true. If somebody's really, really good at sitting behind a desk and closing people up, they're typically not the same people that are really great at going out and finding prospects. So just very different personality types, both equally as good, likely in sales, but just very different personality types.
Okay. And so this is another caution for business owners who are looking at, scaling their sales department. You better be clear on what you want.
Absolutely.
Because I see a lot of car dealerships. I've been working with them for a lot of years now. They want those salespeople to make calls, outbound calls, and get people on a list and pull them into the dealership and stuff. And
yep.
Sometimes I wonder, is that the right person to be making do that, right?
Well, so again, same thing, right? Like, we've worked with guys that are same way, outbound calls, follow-up leads, heavy in the whatever. And you want that guy to be more aggressive, maybe pay him a little bit more because he's willing to do a little bit more work. But that's not the guy that you want, like, sitting behind a desk all day, waiting for somebody to walk in. Like, that guy will get stir crazy and, will be the guy tapping his finger at, like, hey, we need more leads, like, that's the difference, right? So this very different personality types. I caution you guys who are listening to this. This is a very common mistake where somebody hires a trapper in the place of a hunter and it just doesn't work. And the person might have legitimate sales skills, but you got to be real careful about the types of environment that you put certain salespeople in, for sure.
Right. Jon, where is that line? Where is it where the business owner can go, okay, I need a trapper or I need a hunter?
So if you have a whole bunch of leads coming in, you need a hunter or a trapper. I'm sorry.
Trapper.
So if you have a whole bunch of inbound calls coming in, you've got the lead stuff dialed in, you really need somebody who can trap those people when they come through the funnel or whatever the case may be, and make those calls and close those deals. If you don't have a whole lot of leads coming in, and your business, which some do, rely on a sales force or a sales team to go out and prospect and close deals at the same time, like the door-to-door guys, the alarm guys, the home services people. There's a lot of people that are really good on that side. Then what you need is a hunter. You need somebody who is aggressively going to go out and create new business.
Awesome. I heard you talk earlier about, you mentioned putting prospects through a kind of cadence and having a, sort of protocols and a process, essentially, is what you're talking about. Tell us more about the importance of a consistent sales process, because a lot of the businesses out there that I have seen over the last 20 plus years don't have it.
Oh my goodness. It's the difference between hiring a very high performing sales rep and having them succeed quickly, and hiring a very high performing sales rep and having them fail miserably. The process, like literally, if somebody calls our organization and says, I want you guys to help me find a high performing sales rep, one of the very first questions that we qualify them on is, do you have an existing training process or protocol? It is mandatory, because I can go find somebody that possesses all the intangibles, whether they know your business or they don't. They could be completely green and still possess the intangibles, still possess the skill set, all of that stuff. But if you don't have a process that helps them win out of the gate, it doesn't matter how great they are at sales. They could be freaking the best. You could bring Zig Ziglar into your world, and the likelihood of him succeeding without proper knowledge of what your product is and how it functions is like zero. So as long as you have the process built out, what is it? How does it work? What does your real prospect need? What do they want? How do they relate? What type of language do they use? How do you frame them? What are questions that you want to ask? What are things that you need to find out? I mean, it's relatively in depth. And the really cool part is, once it's built out, it's built out. You don't have to ever build it again. And you can make that automated. You could make that training room taught. It doesn't really matter, but that's essentially, think about it like this. It's like a football team, a professional football team walking into a game on Sunday with no playbook versus a professional football team that walks in with a playbook. I don't give a crap if you build a football team of all stars. If they don't have a playbook, they're going to get their asses beat by a college team. Mm-hmm. So it's the exact same thing. If you're hiring salespeople, if your desire is to hire high-profile, high-performing salespeople, there needs to be a playbook or a training protocol or system that gets them that shows them the path of how to win and win quickly.
Right. Yeah. Let's dig into customer pain points, the language that they use. This is the real problem, the question behind the question that this thing solves. Because too many places I've been and personally worked at, they just shove the price list and the product manual across the desk at you and say, there you go.
Yeah.
And these would be organizations with 9, 10 people in the sales room.
Yeah.
So, and everybody was doing it differently. Every single one. And they didn't know and they didn't care. So it is almost baffling.
How do you think the customer experience is going to be when it's delivered differently every single time? Right? How do you build it? How do you build a client base of raving fans when one person talking to the next person is like, well, my sales guy didn't do that. Exactly. I mean, it's a mess, right? So again, I get fired up about that stuff because, sales, they are my people. Those salespeople are my people, and I'm looking out for my people. So yeah, I get it.
Well, feel free to pop in with a story at any time about this stuff. Let's dig into scaling a little bit more. As you go, you're going to, let's say in the beginning, you're going to want a bunch of hunters, and then you got the lead gen problem sorted out, and then now I got tons of leads, so now I got to get those trappers going on. And so I'm kind of shifting priorities from one year to the next, maybe. And then I got economic upturn, downturn, whatever to deal with. Is there a North Star or something that keeps your focus as you're scaling a sales team, something that you should always be keeping in mind?
So for me, anytime I've built or helped build or scaled a sales team, the common theme is I want there to be a process of consistency. I want there to be a team full of winners. I want there to be a team full of people who are always succeeding. And the North Star or the ultimate target would be to not have anybody on my team or anybody in the dynamic that's causing drama or turmoil or issues or problems or whatever. And so actually, Katie, who's my partner in all of this, put a quote on social media today that was really, really powerful. That's like, when the business relationship, when you can no longer see that person in the business relationship in the future, the relationship working together is over. And I think what happens is so many people bring low performing salespeople into an organization, and they're held hostage by those people, that they feel like if they were to rid themselves of those people, they would be cutting off one of their legs. And the opposite is actually true. If you're in a sales organization and you've got 3 guys that suck and 1 guy that's good, and you cut the 3 guys that suck, what doesn't happen is the really good guy doesn't then suck. The really good guy then accelerates, and then he, by nature, because he starts putting out a different vibe, other people are attracted to that and want to come work inside of that organization too. So if the proverbial North Star would have to be anything for me in building a sales team, it's have an entire team full of freaking winners. Like everybody wins, and you got a great culture. There's camaraderie there. And again, side story, I've seen that happen in several different organizations that we've gone into, where the top tier guys are being smothered by the weak performers, because the weak performers are the ones that always need the attention, right? So it's like, well, if you cut these guys, then your top guys will probably produce twice as much as these guys. Oh no, that can't ever happen. So they resist. And then when we absolutely insist, or we fracture the relationship, they end up cutting them, and the top guys just take off. So remember that. If you guys out there have a sales team in place, and you got a couple of people on the bottom that suck and they pull a lot of energy, my response to you, or recommendation to you, would be cut them loose and work to fill those holes. But at the same time, take the time and energy that you were giving to those people and redirect it to the guys that are killing it. They'll be incredibly more grateful for it, I promise.
That is a great perspective, and not one that I've heard very often. So yep. I love the idea that capacity for individual salespersons can actually be increased by getting rid of low performers.
Absolutely.
It does feel counterintuitive, but
totally counterintuitive, right? Because it's almost like, well, I have a low performer who's at least bringing in something.
Right.
Okay. At what cost? Right? That's a fractured statement. Well, they're bringing in something, but how much time and energy are you having to give to those people? Well, a lot. But he does sell. But okay, so in a perfect world, would you rather have a team of 10 really awesome dudes or a team of 30 shitheads? Like, what do you prefer? Well, I'd rather have a team of 10. Everybody would, right? So why then tolerate a team of 30 shitheads? Like, it just doesn't make any sense, right? And it goes back to the cliche phrase of what you tolerate is what continues. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't make any sense to tolerate anything less than what you truly desire. So why do you tolerate it? Well, because they bring in sales. You go right back to that argument, right? But I promise you, and having hired over 1,200 salespeople in my 17 years, there's every single time there's a disturbance in the force. It messes with the force. So you got to get those people out if they're not giving you what you truly desire.
That is amazing as perspective, and the 10 superstars versus 30 idiots is a very clear North Star example to keep in your head, because that cuts through all the baloney, and we're all about the brutal truth here at Cold Star Tech. So, Jon, I appreciate that.
Yep.
How can people get a hold of you, Jon? Where can they go to get your expertise in hiring the right salespeople?
Simple. Just go to thesmashco.com, thesmashco.com. And on our site, there's a section specifically designed to recruiting. There's also a section specifically designed if you've got some holes or something in the process of recruiting or in the process of sales. that you need our help with, we can certainly help you with that too. But I'm sure Jason, you might have something built in for that as well. So, but from the recruiting side, if you need to get a hold of us, thesmashco.com. That's the easiest
Awesome.
place.
Just in case people accidentally skip forward in the video or something, what's one big thing about scaling a sales team that people often miss? That's the big takeaway you would love them to have. If you could grab them by the collar and shake them and get this to get into their heads.
Do not guess at this. Like, do not guess at this process. If you think that you can get on a job board and pluck resumes, if you think that it's smart to sit into several different interviews and hire somebody because they have sales on a resume, if you think it's smart because somebody sat in your conference room and told you that they have 20 years of sales, that they're actually a salesperson, let me just tell you, unless you are running these people through some type of profiling system, an assessment protocol, an assessment system or something, you are fooling yourself. Like, straight up, you are doing best guess hiring practices that will 9 times out of 10 just end up putting you in a place that you never desired to be in. So don't guess at this process. Like, there is a science to it. Some people have mastered that science, and if you're guessing, then no reason to do that.
Thank you, Jon. The statistics have shown that you, in spite of business owners feeling, I'm pretty good at understanding people and I can make a good choice, the science, the statistics have proven that you would have a better chance of hiring a good candidate by pulling a name out of a hat.
That's exactly right.
I'm not making that up.
Nope.
My guest today has been Jon Paramore. He is the ultimate source in finding great salespeople. Thanks for being here, Jon.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.